If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories. My name is Jordan Matthews, and I'm 29 years old. This is a story of how my parents' dismissal of my career became the catalyst for the most satisfying moment of my life. I need to start by explaining my family dynamics. My parents, Robert and Linda Matthews, are what you'd call traditional. They believe in conventional success. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, banker. Respectable careers with stable paychecks and clear advancement paths. My older sister, Ashley, followed that script perfectly. She became a corporate lawyer, married another lawyer, bought a house in the suburbs, and gave my parents exactly what they wanted, bragging rights. I, on the other hand, went a different route. After college, where I studied computer science, I got a job at a small tech startup instead of applying to big corporations. My parents were disappointed but tolerated it, assuming I'd eventually grow up and get a real job at a Fortune 500 company. The startup paid decently, $60,000 a year, but it wasn't impressive by their standards. Ashley was making twice that at her law firm. Every family dinner became a comparison. Ashley just made partner. Ashley's firm gave her a huge bonus. Ashley and David bought a second investment property, and then they'd look at me. How's the startup going? The pause before startup said everything. They'd already decided my career was a phase, a mistake, something to be embarrassed about. I tried to explain what we were building, innovative software that would change how small businesses manage their operations, but their eyes would glaze over. They didn't care about innovation. They cared about prestige and money, things they could brag about to their friends. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. I was 26. The whole family was there. My parents, Ashley and her husband David, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. About 20 people total. We were sitting around the table, and as usual, Ashley was the star of the show. She just closed a major case and gotten a big bonus. Dad was beaming with pride as she talked about it. Then, because the universe has a cruel sense of humor, my uncle asked me about my job. Jordan, you still at that little computer company? I said yes, explaining that we just landed a major client and were expanding. My aunt asked, innocently enough, have you thought about buying a house? You're getting to that age. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Oh, Jordan's not there yet. The startup doesn't pay enough for a mortgage. Dad added, his voice dripping with condescension. You'll never afford a house working that job. You need stability, security. Maybe it's time to look at real opportunities. The table went quiet. I felt my face get hot. Ashley looked uncomfortable. David studied his plate. My grandmother, bless her, said, Robert, that's harsh. But Dad doubled down. I'm being realistic. Jordan needs to hear this. That startup dream needs to end. Get a real job with a real future. Then we can talk about mortgages. I set down my fork. My hands were shaking with anger and humiliation. I'm doing fine, Dad. Better than you think. He laughed. Actually laughed. Jordan, I was in banking for 30 years. I know what financial success looks like. And what you're doing, that's not it. I left shortly after, drove home to my apartment, sat on my couch, and decided something had to change. Not my career, but their perception of it. I needed to prove them wrong. Spectacularly. What my parents didn't know, what I deliberately kept from them, was that my little startup was doing incredibly well. In the 3 years since I joined, we'd grown from 15 employees to 80. Our software had gained traction with major clients. And I wasn't just an employee anymore. 2 years in, the founders had offered me equity, 10% of the company. I'd taken it, understanding that it was either going to be worth millions or nothing. 6 months after that horrible Thanksgiving dinner, we got acquired. A major tech company bought us for $90 million. My 10% suddenly became $9 million. After taxes and some complications with vesting schedules, I walked away with about $6 million. $6 million at 27 years old. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone except my financial advisor and my best friend, Marcus. I kept living in my apartment, kept driving my old Honda. Kept working because I loved what I did. The acquiring company had kept most of us on, and I was now making $250,000 a year on top of my nest egg. But to my family, I was still the disappointment. The one with a startup job that would never amount to anything. At Christmas that year, 6 months after the acquisition, my parents gave me a Dave Ramsey book about financial planning. The inscription read, "For when you're ready to get serious about your future." I smiled and thanked them. Inside, I was plotting. I put the first $1 million into safe investments, index funds, bonds, diversification. I used another $1 million to invest in a few early-stage startups I believed in. The remaining $4 million, I kept liquid, waiting for the right opportunity. That opportunity came 15 months after the acquisition. My parents had lived in the same house for 30 years. A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale suburb. They'd bought it in the 90s for $200,000. Now it was worth about $800,000. I knew this because I'd been casually tracking the real estate market in their neighborhood. They'd mentioned several times they were thinking about downsizing. The house was too big now that Ashley and I were gone. The maintenance was expensive. Property taxes kept increasing. But they hadn't seriously pursued it because the market was competitive and they weren't sure they'd get their asking price. In March, about 18 months after the acquisition, my mom called me. "Jordan, honey, your father and I have decided to sell the house. We've listed it with a realtor. $850,000. We're excited to downsize into something more manageable." I asked where they were planning to move. "There's a nice condo community nearby. 2 bedrooms, much easier to maintain. We put an offer on one, contingent on selling the house." I congratulated them and asked how the listing was going. We had a few showings, but no offers yet. The realtor says it might take a few months, but we're optimistic. I hung up and immediately called my financial advisor. I need to move some money around, and I needed to look like it's coming from an LLC, not from me personally. He asked what I was planning. I told him. He laughed. "That's diabolical." I love it. Within a week, we'd set up a limited liability company, Atlas Property Investments, LLC. It looked like a standard real estate investment company. Professional, legitimate, no obvious connection to me. I transferred $1 million into the LLC's account. Then I called a real estate agent I'd researched carefully. Someone who didn't know my family. Someone who could represent Atlas Property Investments without any conflict of interest. The real estate agent, a woman named Patricia Chun, met with me at a coffee shop. I explained that my LLC was interested in properties in that specific suburb, that we were looking for a family home to renovate and flip or rent. She showed me several listings. I pretended to consider them. Then, casually, I mentioned my parents' address. "What about this one? I saw it's on the market." She pulled it up. "Oh, yes, the Matthews property. Beautiful house. Good bones. They're asking $850. I said, "I'm interested. Can we see it?" We scheduled a showing for the following week. I made sure it was a time when my parents wouldn't be home. Patricia had no idea I was related to the sellers. I'd used my middle name, Jordan Michael, when setting up the LLC, and I'd been vague about my background. The showing was surreal. Walking through my childhood home as a potential buyer, seeing my old bedroom, now converted into my dad's home office. The kitchen where Mom had made countless dinners. The living room where we'd open Christmas presents. Patricia pointed out features. Original hardwood floors. Recently updated kitchen. New roof 5 years ago. The sellers have maintained it beautifully. I nodded, taking notes like a serious investor. I asked questions about the neighborhood, the school district, property taxes, everything an investor would ask. Then I said, "I'm very interested. I'd like to make an offer." Patricia looked pleased. "Wonderful. What were you thinking?" I said, "I want to make this easy for the sellers. I'll offer $900,000. All cash. No inspection contingency. They can choose their closing date." Her eyes widened. "That's $50,000 over asking. And all cash? That's an incredible offer." I shrugged. It's the right property. And I want to move fast. She said she'd present the offer immediately. That evening, my mom called me. She was practically screaming with excitement. Jordan, you won't believe it. We got an offer on the house. It's perfect. I acted surprised. Really? That's great, Mom. She gushed about the details. $900,000, all cash. The buyers want close in 30 days. It's like a dream. I asked if they accepted. Of course. We accepted immediately. This is exactly what we needed. We can buy the condo now. Dad got on the phone. Jordan, this is what I'm talking about. This is what happens when you make good life choices. We bought this house decades ago, maintained it well, and now we're reaping the rewards. That's real financial success. I bit my tongue. Congratulations, Dad. He continued, you should learn from this. Real estate is real wealth, not these tech fantasies. Maybe if you focus on building real assets instead of playing around with computers, you'd be in a better position. I said, you're right, Dad. Real estate is important. He didn't catch the irony. Over the next month, the sale proceeded smoothly. My lawyer handled everything through the LLC. My parents had no idea their buyer was their son. They were thrilled with how easy the process was. The buyers weren't demanding, didn't ask for repairs, didn't nickel and dime them, just wanted a straightforward transaction. These investors are so professional, Mom told me during one of our weekly calls. Not like some of the difficult buyers we've heard about. I agreed. Sounds like you got lucky. The closing was scheduled for April 15th. My parents would sign the papers, get their check, and move to their new condo. I planned to let them enjoy their victory for exactly 1 week. Then I'd tell them the truth. The closing happened as scheduled. My parents signed the papers at the title company. Atlas Property Investments, LLC signed remotely through my lawyer. My parents received a check for $900,000. That same day, they closed on their condo. They were thrilled. They called me that evening, celebrating. We did it. We're officially condo owners. And we made so much more than we expected on the house. I congratulated them warmly. That's fantastic. I'm happy for you. Over the next week, they settled into their new place. 2 bedrooms, smaller but nice. They kept talking about their wonderful luck with a house sale. How smooth everything was. How generous the buyers were. I waited exactly 7 days. On April 22nd, I drove to their new condo. I told them I was coming to see the new place, bring a housewarming gift. They were excited to give me a tour. I arrived at 6 p.m. Mom had made dinner. Dad was in a great mood, showing me around their new space. See, Jordan, this is smart living. No more huge house to maintain. No more expensive repairs. Just simple, easy living. And we got money in the bank now. I nodded along. After dinner, we sat in their living room. I set down my coffee cup and said, I have something to tell you both. They looked at me expectantly. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I need to show you something. I handed my dad a document. It was the deed to their old house. He looked confused. Why do you have this? I said, because I'm the owner now. I bought your house. The room went silent. Mom looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. What are you talking about? I explained calmly. Atlas Property Investments? That's my LLC. I was the buyer. I bought your house for $900,000 in cash. Dad's face went through several emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, finally anger. What the hell are you talking about? You don't have that kind of money. This is some kind of joke. I pulled out my phone and showed him my bank statements. The LLC account, the transaction history, the wire transfer of $900,000. Mom was pale. Jordan, how is this possible? You can't. I said, remember that startup you both dismissed? The one that would never amount to anything? It got acquired 18 months ago for $90 million. I owned 10%. That's $9 million, which became about $6 million after taxes. The silence was deafening. I continued. I've been financially set for almost 2 years. But you both were so convinced I was a failure that you never bothered to ask how I was actually doing. You just assumed. Dad found his voice. You bought our house? Why would you do that? I looked at him directly. Because you told me I'd never afford a house working my job. You said I needed a real career, real financial success. So I wanted to show you what real financial success looks like. Mom was crying now. This is cruel, Jordan. Why would you hide this from us? I said, because you made it very clear you didn't respect my choices. Every family gathering, every phone call, every conversation was about how Ashley was succeeding and I was failing. I got tired defending myself, so I stopped sharing. Dad was still processing. So you bought our house out of spite? To prove a point? I shook my head. No, I bought it as an investment, and to show you that your judgment of my career was wrong. Dead wrong. You couldn't see past your own biases to recognize that I was building something valuable. I stood up. I'm not going to kick you out or anything dramatic. The house is mine. I'll probably renovate it and rent it out, or sell for a profit in a few years. But I wanted you to know that the disappointing son with the startup job is now your former landlord. I left shortly after. Dad tried to argue. Mom tried to guilt trip me. But I'd said what I needed to say. Over the next few days, my phone exploded. Calls from my parents. Texts from Ashley, who they'd apparently told. Messages from relatives who'd heard the story. Ashley called me directly. Jordan, what the fuck? You bought Mom and Dad's house and didn't tell them. I explained the whole situation. The dismissal, the humiliation, the decision to prove them wrong. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I get it. They've been assholes about your career, but this is extreme. I disagreed. No, extreme would be evicting them. Extreme would be rubbing in their faces publicly. I simply made a smart investment and revealed the truth afterward. They're the ones who made assumptions. She sighed. Fair point, but they're devastated. I said, they're embarrassed. There's a difference. They're not sad I succeeded. They're upset that they were wrong, and everyone's going to find out. Ashley couldn't argue with that. My parents tried multiple approaches. First, anger. Dad left a voicemail calling me disrespectful and immature. I didn't respond. Then guilt. Mom sent long texts about how hurt she was, how I betrayed their trust. I replied once, I didn't betray anything. I made a business transaction. Your hurt feelings are about your own assumptions, not my actions. Then, bargaining. Dad called offering to buy the house back. We'll give you $950,000, a $50,000 profit. That's fair. I told him the house wasn't for sale. Finally, other family members got involved. My uncle called. Jordan, I heard what happened. That was brilliant, but maybe ease up on your parents a bit. I asked if he remembered Thanksgiving 3 years ago, when Dad humiliated me in front of everyone. He did. Yeah, that was rough, but he's your father. I said, and I'm his son, who he dismissed for years. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect. 2 weeks after the revelation, my parents asked to meet me for coffee. Just the three of us. I agreed, curious what they wanted to say. We met at a neutral location. They looked tired, older. The weight of the situation had clearly taken a toll. Mom spoke first. Jordan, we've been talking. A lot. About everything. About how we've treated you. About our assumptions. Dad added, we owe you an apology. A real one. I waited. Mom continued. We were wrong. About your career. About your potential. About dismissing your choices. We got so locked into our idea of success that we couldn't see you were succeeding in a different way. Dad looked uncomfortable, but he pushed forward. I was particularly hard on you, because you remind me of myself at your age, idealistic, taking risks. But I played it safe, went the traditional route. And maybe I resented that you had the courage to do what I didn't. That admission surprised me. He continued. When we found out you bought the house, my first reaction was anger. But then I realized you did exactly what I always claimed was important. You made a smart investment. You built wealth. You achieved financial success. I just couldn't see it because it came from a path I didn't understand. Mom said, "We're proud of you. We should have been saying that all along. But we were too busy comparing you to Ashley, to our preconceived notions of success. That was wrong." I appreciated their apology, but I also needed to be clear. I accept your apology, but you need to understand, the damage wasn't just about money or career. It was about respect. You made me feel like I was less than, like my choices were foolish, like I was a disappointment. That hurts more than any financial insecurity. They both nodded, tears in Mom's eyes. I continued, "I don't need you to understand tech or startups, but I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing with my life, that my path is valid, even if it's different from Ashley's." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. They asked questions about my work, about the acquisition, about my plans. For the first time, they were genuinely interested in my life, not comparing me to Ashley, not judging my choices, just listening. Dad asked, "What are you going to do with the house?" I'd been thinking about that. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Probably rent it out. It's a good property in a good neighborhood. Could generate solid rental income. Or I might sell it in a few years when the market peaks. He nodded thoughtfully. "That's smart. You clearly know what you're doing." Mom asked, "Are you going to tell the rest of the family about the acquisition money?" I said, "Eventually, when it feels right, but I'm not going to make an announcement. If people ask directly, I'll be honest, but I'm not interested in bragging." She looked relieved. "That's mature of you." I shrugged. I didn't do this for attention. I did it to prove a point to you two specifically. Mission accomplished. Dad asked, "Can we start over? Build a better relationship based on respect instead of assumptions?" I thought about it. Maybe, but it'll take time. You spent years making me feel inadequate. That doesn't disappear with one conversation. They agreed. We parted ways with a tentative peace. Not fully healed, but starting the process. Over the next few months, things slowly improved. My parents made genuine efforts to engage with my life, to ask about my work without judgment, to stop comparing me to Ashley. It wasn't perfect. Old habits crept in sometimes, but they caught themselves and apologized. I started sharing more about my life, about the investments I was making, about the work I was doing, about my plans for the future. They listened, really listened, and slowly, very slowly, we rebuilt our relationship on healthier foundations. 6 months after buying their house, I made a decision about what to do with it. I'd been exploring options. Renting it out would generate about $3,500 a month. Selling it could net a profit, especially if I renovated first. But I decided on a third option. I called my parents and Ashley to a family meeting. We gathered at a restaurant, neutral territory. I told them I wanted to discuss the house and my plans. They were nervous, unsure what I was going to say. After we ordered, I pulled out some papers. "I've made a decision about the house." They waited. "I'm going to keep it, renovate it, and when I have kids someday, it'll be their home. The house where you raise me will be where I raise my family." Mom started crying. Dad looked emotional. Ashley smiled. I continued, "It's a good house, full of memories, some difficult, but many good ones too. I want to honor that while making it mine." Dad asked, "What about the renovations? What are you planning?" I pulled out sketches and plans. I'd hired an architect. I'm updating the kitchen, modernizing the bathrooms, converting your old office back into a bedroom, adding a home office in the basement, keeping the character, but making it functional for modern life. Mom looked at the plans. "This is beautiful, Jordan." I nodded. "It'll cost about $150,000, but it'll be worth it. When I'm done, it'll be a great family home." I didn't mention that I was also paying for it entirely in cash, that my investments had continued growing, that I now had over $7 million in net worth. They didn't need to know every detail. We talked for hours about the renovation plans. My parents offered suggestions, shared memories, told stories about raising us in that house. It was healing in an unexpected way. As we left, Dad pulled me aside. "Thank you for keeping the house, for letting it stay in the family. In a way, that means a lot. I told him I was doing it for me, not for them, but I appreciated that it mattered to him. The renovation took 4 months. I hired a great contractor, paid a premium for quality work, and stayed involved in every decision. I visited the house weekly, watching it transform. It was strange being there without my parents, walking through rooms that had been theirs, making decisions about spaces that held my childhood memories. But it was also empowering. I was taking something from my past and making it my future. The kitchen went from dated to modern. White cabinets, quartz countertops, new appliances. The master bathroom got a complete overhaul. The old bedroom became a guest room. I kept some original features. The fireplace in the living room. The built-in bookshelves in the den. The oak tree in the backyard that I climbed as a kid. I wanted to honor the house's history while making it mine. During this time, my relationship with my parents continued to improve. They'd visit during renovations, offering input when asked. They told me stories about choices they'd made when they first bought the house. Dad mentioned, when we bought this place, we were young and broke. We stretched our budget to afford it. It was scary but worth it. I found that interesting. They'd taken a risk on this house. But when I took risks on my career, they'd criticize me. I pointed that out. Dad acknowledged it. You're right. We forgot that our own success came from taking chances. We should have remembered that with you. Mom added, we got comfortable, started thinking there was only one path to success. That was wrong. These conversations helped. They were finally understanding their own hypocrisy. The renovation finished in early November. The house looked incredible, modern but warm, updated but respectful of its history. I furnished it carefully. Quality pieces but not ostentatious. I wanted a home, not a showroom. I hosted a reveal party, invited my parents, Ashley and David, a few close friends. Everyone was impressed. Ashley pulled me aside during the party. This is amazing, Jordan. You've really made it yours. I thank her. She continued, I need to apologize too, for the years I went along with Mom and Dad's narrative, for not defending you, for benefiting from being the successful child while you were dismissed. I appreciated that. You weren't the problem. You didn't do anything wrong. They created the comparison, not you. She disagreed. No, I participated. I could push back, could have told them to stop, but I didn't because it was easier to be the golden child. She looked around the house. But look at you now. You surpassed me financially, bought a house in cash, and rebuilt it beautifully. And you did it all while being dismissed and underestimated. I told her success wasn't a competition. She agreed. I know, but I'm still proud of you. And sorry I didn't say that sooner. We hugged. It felt like another piece of healing. My parents spent the evening walking through their old house, now transformed. I caught Mom touching the built-in bookshelves, tears in her eyes. Dad stood in the backyard, staring at the oak tree. After most guests left, we sat in the living room. Just family. Dad said, You've done something remarkable here, Jordan. Not just with the house, but with your life. You prove us wrong in the best way possible. Mom added, and you did it with grace. You could have been cruel, could have rubbed our faces in it, but you took the high road. I told them I considered the cruel route, being petty, making them feel small. But that's not who I want to be. I wanted to prove my success, yes, but I also wanted to build something meaningful. This house is both. Dad said, We don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope over time we can earn back your trust. I told them they were already doing that. This past year, you've been different, actually interested in my life, actually respectful. That's what I needed. Mom asked, What's next for you? I shared my plans. I was dating someone seriously. Emma. She was a teacher, kind and grounded. We'd been together for 8 months. I'd told her about my finances early, wanting to make sure she loved me, not my money. She'd proven she did. Emma and I moved into the house together in December. It felt right, like the house had been waiting for this next chapter. My parents had met Emma several times by then. They loved her. Dad said, "She's perfect for you. Grounded. Real. Not impressed by money." Mom agreed. "She's lovely. You two are wonderful together." Having their approval felt good, even though I didn't need it anymore. I'd learned that their opinion didn't define my worth. But having their genuine support was nice. Emma knew the whole story. About the acquisition. About the house. About my parents' dismissal and eventual apology. She'd listen without judgment, just support. One evening, we were sitting in the living room. She looked around and said, "Do you ever feel weird living in your childhood home?" I thought about it. Sometimes. But mostly it feels right. Like I'm honoring my past while building my future. She smiled. I love that perspective. We started hosting family dinners. Monthly gatherings where my parents, Ashley and David, and sometimes extended family would come over. Emma cooked. I helped. And we'd all sit around the same dining table where I'd eaten thousands of meals as a child. During one dinner, my uncle, the one who'd asked about me buying a house all those years ago, brought up the acquisition. "Jordan, I have to ask, how does it feel, being the rich tech guy no one saw coming?" I laughed. Honestly, it feels good, not because of the money itself, but because I trusted my instincts when everyone else doubted me. That validation matters more than the dollar amount. Dad spoke up. "I think we've all learned something from Jordan's success. That conventional paths aren't the only ones at work. That we should support people's choices even if we don't understand them." Mom added, "And that dismissing someone's potential is cruel and short-sighted." Ashley raised her glass. "To Jordan, for proving everyone wrong and doing it with class." We toasted. It felt full circle. From that humiliating Thanksgiving to this moment of recognition and respect. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I continued working, though I didn't need to financially. I found meaning in the work. Emma and I talked about marriage, about kids, about building a life in this house. My parents visited often. They'd soften with age and humility. They talked about their own regrets, lessons learned, pride in both their children. I'd forgiven them, truly, not because they deserved it immediately, but because holding anger was exhausting. They'd apologized. They'd changed. They were trying. That was enough. One Saturday afternoon, Dad and I were in the backyard. He was helping me plan a vegetable garden. He said, "You know what I regret most?" I asked what? "That Thanksgiving. When I told you you'd never afford a house. When I dismissed your career in front of everyone. I've forgiven it, but I let him talk. I was so sure I knew what success looked like. So convinced my path was the only path. I couldn't see that the world had changed, that opportunities one never imagined existed." He paused. "You saw something I didn't. You bet on yourself when I was betting against you. And you won." I told him. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about being respected for my choices. He nodded. "You were right. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." We worked in silence for a while. Then he said, "Thank you." I asked for what? For not giving up on me. On us. You could have cut us off completely. Many people would have. But you gave us a chance to do better. I told him, "You're my parents. I love you. Even when you hurt me, I loved you. I just needed you to see me." He hugged me. We both cried a little. It was healing we both needed. A year after moving into the house, Emma and I got engaged. I proposed in the backyard, under the oak tree. She said yes, crying and laughing. We called our families immediately. My parents were thrilled. They'd grown to love Emma like a daughter. We started planning a wedding. Small, intimate, just close family and friends. In that same backyard where I proposed. During planning, my parents asked if they could contribute financially. I told them it wasn't necessary. Dad insisted, "Please, let us do this. Let us be part of it in a meaningful way." I agreed, letting them cover the catering. Not because I needed the money, but because it was their way of showing support. The wedding planning brought everyone closer. Ashley was Emma's maid of honor. My best friend Marcus was my best man. My parents were involved, but not overbearing. It felt healthy, balanced. One evening, Mom and Emma were discussing flowers. I overheard Mom say, "I'm so glad Jordan found you. You're perfect for him." Emma said, "He's pretty perfect too." Mom got emotional. "He is. And I'm ashamed it took me so long to see it, to appreciate him for who he is instead of who I wanted him to be." Emma said gently, "But you see it now. That's what matters." Mom said, "Thank you for being patient with us, with our learning curve." I realized that Emma's presence had helped my parents grow too. She modeled unconditional support. She treated my career with respect. She showed them what healthy love looked like. Our wedding day was perfect. Sunny, warm, full of love. We got married under the oak tree. Dad walked Emma down the aisle. Mom cried happy tears. Ashley gave a beautiful speech about watching me grow from dismissed younger brother to successful, confident man. Marcus roasted me gently, then got serious and said, "Jordan's success isn't about money. It's about integrity, about trusting himself, about being kind even when others weren't kind to him." Emma and I exchanged vows we'd written. I promised to always value her, support her dreams, and build a life based on love, not appearances. She promised the same. As we kissed, as everyone cheered, I looked around at the house I'd bought, the family I'd rebuilt relationships with, the life I created. It was perfect, not because it was easy, but because I'd fought for it. Married life suited us. Emma continued teaching. I continued working, though I'd moved into more advisory and investment roles. We talked about starting a family, about filling the house with kids and laughter, about creating new memories in this space. I'd also started doing something else with my money, giving back. I'd set up a scholarship fund at my university for students studying computer science, especially those from non-traditional backgrounds, students like I'd been, taking risks on innovative paths. I funded it with $500,000, enough to support 10 students a year with full rides. My parents learned about it through the university's newsletter. Dad called me. "I saw the scholarship fund. That's incredible, Jordan." I told him it felt important. I got lucky, but I also had the privilege of being able to take risks. I want to help others do the same. Mom said, "We're so proud of you, not just for your financial success, but for what you're doing with it." That meant something. Their pride, freely given, not forced or obligatory. We also started a tradition. Every Thanksgiving, we'd host. The whole family would come to the house. We'd eat around the same table where years ago I'd been humiliated and dismissed. But now, the dynamic was different. Ashley and I were equals. My parents were respectful. Emma was the heart of the gathering. This past Thanksgiving, 5 years after that horrible dinner, we gathered again. 30 people, family and close friends. After dinner, Dad asked if he could say something. He stood, glass raised. "I want to make a toast." 5 years ago, at a Thanksgiving dinner, I said something to Jordan that I've regretted every day since. He looked at me. "I told you you'd never afford a house working your job, that you needed a real career." I was wrong, spectacularly wrong. Dad continued. "Not only did Jordan afford a house, he bought ours in cash, then renovated it beautifully, then filled it with love and family and meaning. He got emotional. But more than that, he taught me that success looks different than I thought, that innovation and risk-taking are valid paths, that my narrow definition of achievement was limiting and harmful." He raised his glass. "To Jordan, for proving me wrong, for forgiving me, for being a better man than I was a father for too many years, and for turning this house into something even more special than it was when your mother and I raised you here." Everyone raised their glasses. I felt Emma squeeze my hand under the table. Dad wasn't finished. And to Emma, for showing us all what unconditional support looks like, for loving our son so completely, for making this house a home again. Mom stood too. "I want to add something. Jordan, when you bought this house, I was angry. I felt tricked. But looking back, I see it differently now. You weren't tricking us. You were finally showing us who you really were, and we'd been too blind to see it." She wiped tears. You're generous, brilliant, kind, and forgiving. All things you learned despite us, not because of us. Thank you for giving us the chance to do better, to be better. Ashley stood. Can I say something too? Everyone nodded. I spent most of my life being the successful child, the one who did everything right. Got the degrees, the job, the house. I was praised while Jordan was dismissed, and I let it happen. She looked at me. But here's the truth. Jordan surpassed me in every meaningful way, not just financially, but in character, in courage, in the kind of success that actually matters. I'm proud to be your sister, even though I didn't earn that pride for far too long. I stood up, overwhelmed. Thank you, all of you. This journey hasn't been easy, but it's brought us here, to this table, in this house, with this family, and that's worth everything. The rest of the evening was filled with laughter, stories, and love. Later, after everyone left, Emma and I cleaned up together. She said, "That was beautiful. Your dad's speech. Your mom's. Ashley's. It felt like real healing." I agreed. 5 years ago, I never would have imagined this. I was so angry, so hurt, so determined to prove them wrong. She asked, "Do you regret how you did it? Buying the house secretly?" I thought about it. No, they needed to be shocked into seeing me. A quiet conversation wouldn't have done it. This was the only way to break through decades of dismissal. She nodded. And now, I looked around the house. Our home. Now I'm just grateful. Grateful I trusted myself. Grateful I took risks. Grateful I succeeded. And grateful they were willing to change. She kissed me. I'm grateful, too, that your path led you here, led you to me. We finished cleaning and sat on the couch, the same spot where I'd sat 5 years ago when I first moved in, where I'd made plans to renovate, where I'd dreamed about the future. Now that future was real, better than I'd imagined. A few months after that Thanksgiving, Emma told me she was pregnant. We cried together. Holding each other in the master bedroom that had been my parents' room was now ours. Our daughter would be born in this house, would grow up in these rooms, would climb that oak tree. The circle was completing in the most beautiful way. I called my parents to tell them. They were overjoyed. Dad said, "A grandchild in the house where we raised you. That's perfect." Mom said, "We can't wait. We'll help however you need. Babysitting, anything." I believe them. They'd proven over the past 5 years that they meant what they said, that they genuinely changed. When I told Ashley, she was thrilled. I'm going to be an aunt. This baby is going to be so loved. The pregnancy brought everyone even closer. My parents visited weekly, helping us prepare the nursery, the same room that had been mine as a child. Emma and I painted it soft yellow, neutral, calming. We furnished it with a crib, rocking chair, changing table. All the essentials. Mom helped organize baby clothes. Dad built a toy chest. Ashley hosted a baby shower, inviting all our friends and family. The love surrounding this baby before she was even born was overwhelming. During the shower, Mom gave a speech. Emma and Jordan are going to be incredible parents. They've built this beautiful home, this beautiful life, and they did it with integrity and love. This baby is lucky to have them. Later, she pulled me aside. "You know what I'm most excited about?" I asked what. "Watching you be the father I should have encouraged you to become. Supporting your daughter the way we should have supported you." I told her, "You're supporting me now. That's what matters." She hugged me. "Thank you for that, Grace." Our daughter, Sophie, was born on a rainy morning in June. 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. Emma was a champion through labor. I cried when Sophie was first placed in my arms. My parents came to the hospital within hours. They held Sophie with such tenderness. Dad said, "She's beautiful, just like her mother." Mom cried happy tears. Our first grandchild, in the house where we raised you. Over the next few months, Sophie grew. My parents were involved, but respectful grandparents. They babysat when we needed it. They offered advice without being overbearing. They showed up, truly showed up, One evening, Dad was rocking Sophie while Emma and I cleaned up after dinner. He said, "You know what's remarkable?" I asked what. "This house has seen 3 generations now. Your grandparents visited when you were young. We raised you here. Now you're raising Sophie here. There's something special about that continuity." I agreed. The house had become more than just a structure. It was a legacy, a symbol of growth, forgiveness, and family. When Sophie was 6 months old, we hosted a small gathering, close family, just to celebrate her half-birthday. As we sat in the living room, Sophie on a blanket surrounded by toys, I looked around at everyone. My parents, older but softer, Ashley and David, expecting their first child now. Emma, my partner in everything. Marcus, my best friend who'd been there through everything. I thought about the journey, from that humiliating Thanksgiving to this moment of joy and peace, from being dismissed to being celebrated, from proving them wrong to forgiving them. Dad caught me looking thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" I told him just how far we've come, how different things are now. He nodded. "It's because of you. You changed the trajectory. You showed us a different way." I disagreed. "It's because we all chose to do better. You chose to listen, to change, to apologize. That takes courage too." Mom said, "We're grateful you gave us that chance." Ashley added, "And we're grateful for the example you set, of standing up for yourself, of demanding respect, of proving that unconventional paths can lead to extraordinary success." I told them I didn't do it to be an example. I did it because I had to, because I couldn't keep accepting being less than. Emma said, "And in doing that, you taught all of us something valuable, about believing in yourself, about defining success on your own terms, about the importance of respect and support." Sophie made a noise, drawing everyone's attention. We laughed, the heavy moment broken, but the truth remained. This house, this family, this life, it was all built on the foundation of standing up for myself, of refusing to accept someone else's limited vision of what I could be. A year after Sophie was born, I made another decision. I called my parents and Ashley for a meeting. We gathered at the house. They looked nervous, unsure what I wanted to discuss. I'd been vague, just saying it was important. After we settled in the living room, I pulled out some papers. I've been thinking about the future, about legacy, about what I want to leave behind. They waited. I've decided to set up a trust for Sophie and any future children Emma and I have, but also for Ashley's kids, for any grandchildren my parents have. I handed them the documents. "I'm putting $2 million into this trust. It'll grow over time. When the kids are adults, they'll have access to it for education, starting businesses, buying homes, whatever they need to build their own paths." Everyone was stunned. Dad said, "Jordan, that's incredibly generous. But you don't have to." I interrupted. "I want to. I've been fortunate, lucky, but also hardworking. I want the next generation to have opportunities, to take risks without drowning in debt, to pursue unconventional paths if they want." Mom was crying. "This is beautiful." Ashley said, "Thank you, not just for the money, but for the message you're sending, that you support whatever paths our kids choose." I nodded. "Exactly. I don't want them to feel pressured into traditional careers if that's not what they want. But I also don't want them to feel pressured to be entrepreneurs if that's not them either. I just want them to be supported." Dad said, "You're ensuring they never feel what you felt." I agreed. That's the goal. We talked through the details. The trust was structured to provide support without creating entitled kids. They'd have to show responsibility, have plans, demonstrate effort. But the resources would be there. As everyone left, Mom hugged me. "You've built something remarkable, Jordan. Not just wealth, but a legacy of support and respect. That's what real success looks like." I realized she was right. The money was nice. The house was wonderful. But the real success was the relationships we'd rebuilt, the family we'd healed, the future we were creating together. 2 years later, I'm 32. Sophie is 2.5. Emma and I are expecting our second child, a boy. Ashley has a 1-year-old daughter. My parents are thriving in their condo, but visit constantly. The house remains the center of our family's life. We host holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners. It's filled with laughter, love, and the kind of joy that comes from genuine connection. Last week, I was working in my home office, the room I converted from my dad's old space. Sophie came in, holding her toy phone. "Daddy, I'm working like you." I scooped her up. "What kind of work are you doing?" She said, "Computer work." Like, "Daddy." I thought about that, about how she saw my career as something normal, something to be proud of, something to emulate. She'd never know the dismissal I faced, the doubt, the humiliation, because we were raising her in an environment of support. Later that evening, Emma and I were putting Sophie to bed. She asked, as she did every night, "Tell story?" I told her a story about a person who believed in themselves even when others didn't, who worked hard, who was kind, who built something beautiful. She fell asleep before I finished. Emma and I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. Emma whispered, "She's so lucky to grow up here, with this family, with this love." I agreed. We all are. We walked downstairs, past the living room where I confronted my parents, past the dining room where we'd had that awful Thanksgiving, past the kitchen where Mom had cooked thousands of meals. Every room held memories, some painful, many beautiful, all meaningful. I thought about the journey, about the 26-year-old who'd been told he'd never afford a house, who'd been dismissed and underestimated, who'd bought his parents' house in cash just to prove a point. That young man felt like a different person now, not because the anger had been wrong, but because I transformed it into something constructive, into success, into forgiveness, into love. Today, I'm sitting in the backyard. Sophie is playing near the oak tree. Emma is beside me, hand on her pregnant belly. My parents are coming for dinner. Ashley and her family, too. It's become our routine, our tradition. In a few hours, we'll gather around that table. We'll eat. We'll laugh. We'll share stories. And nobody will mention my career with anything but respect. I think about the house often, about what it represents. It's not just a building I bought in cash to prove a point. It's the physical manifestation of believing in yourself, of refusing to be defined by others' limitations, of the power of forgiveness and growth. My parents learned. That's what I'm most proud of. Not that I succeeded financially, but that I helped them see differently, that I showed them another way, that our relationship transformed from dismissal to respect. Sophie calls out, "Daddy, come play." I join her under the oak tree, the same tree I climbed as a child, the same tree I propose under, the same tree my children will climb. As I lift Sophie onto a low branch, I think about what I'd tell my 26-year-old self, that angry, hurt young man sitting at Thanksgiving dinner. I'd tell him, "They'll learn. It'll hurt first, but they'll learn, and you'll forgive them, and you'll build something beautiful from all that pain." I'd tell him, the house isn't the victory. The money isn't the victory. The victory is standing firm in who you are until the world adjusts to meet you. I'd tell him, one day, you'll sit under this tree with your daughter in the house you bought, with the family you rebuilt, and you'll feel peace. Real, genuine peace. My parents said I'd never afford a house working that job, so I bought theirs in cash. But the real story isn't about the money or the house. It's about a son who demanded respect, parents who learned to give it, and a family that grew stronger through honesty, accountability, and love. That's the legacy I'm building. That's what I'll pass to Sophie and her brother. Not just wealth, but the knowledge that they're enough, that their paths are valid, that they are supported no matter what. My parents learned that lesson. It took them too long, cost too much pain, but they learned it, and now they're helping me teach it to the next generation. That's redemption. That's success. That's what matters. The house is just a house. Beautiful, yes. Meaningful, absolutely. But it's the people inside it that make it special. The love we've rebuilt. The respect we've established. The future we're creating together. I look at Sophie, giggling on the tree branch. At Emma, glowing with our second child. At the house that's been the stage for so much growth. And I feel grateful, not for proving my parents wrong, but for what came after, for the family we've become, for the love that's replaced the dismissal, for the respect that's replaced the judgment. My parents said I'd never afford a house working that job. They were wrong, but they admitted it. They changed. They grew. And that's worth more than any house could ever be. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories about family, redemption, and the power of believing in yourself. Your support means everything.